All right, good afternoon, everybody. Before we kick off the press conference today, I'd like to take a moment to discuss an extremely important activity that every Kansan should complete, the 2020 census. The importance of census participation cannot be overstated. Kansas communities receive over $6 billion every year from the federal government based on our last count. These funds provide critical resources for our schools, our healthcare, family and social services, and emergency response in our communities. And the effects of the census can be felt even during the pandemic. The amount of PPE, personal protective equipment, that gets dispersed is dispersed based upon our county numbers. So the census is important. Our population count also determines the amount of federal representation we have in Congress, and Kansas cannot afford to lose another seat. Completing the census is safe, it's easy, and it's important. I encourage all Kansans to be proactive about this, so pick up the phone, send a text, write an email, or post on your social media platforms and encourage others to fill out the census. Your community depends upon it. Now I would like to address the anti-Semitic cartoon that likened my mask order, designed to keep Kansans safe, to the Holocaust. As I said before, the image was deeply offensive and does not reflect the values of Anderson County or of Kansas. I'm glad that Mr. Hicks realized his significant lapse in judgment and apologized. That was the right thing to do. But the cartoon serves as an example of how politicized common sense public health measures have become. Using this type of rhetoric to describe a mask mandate didn't start with Anderson County Review. Many elected leaders in this state and across the country have chosen to dismiss recommendations from public health experts in favor of short-term political points. Many elected leaders, thanks to social media, anti-public health rhetoric and bogus science can be shared in homes all across our state. We've all seen it on our Facebook pages and know the corrosive impact it has on our ability to combat the spread of COVID-19. But the truth is that the Center for Disease Control is urging everyone to wear cloth face coverings in public settings and practice social distancing because these proactive steps work. Until we have a vaccine, masks, social distancing, and good hygiene are our best defenses against this virus. Kansas is at a make it or break it moment, so let's do the right and the smart thing. Today, I'm also once again announcing the Kansas Department of Health and Environment is recommending that our state remain in phase 3 of the Ad Astra reopening plan due to significant increases in the disease spread metric. The nearly 3,500 new cases in the past 2 weeks is the steepest rate of increase we have seen since the pandemic began. It brings our total case count to more than 16,000. The state has 235 clusters, 118 of which are active, accounting for a total of 6,110 cases and 210 deaths. I believe that 210 deaths is really 280 deaths. Today's case numbers show an increase of nearly 1,000 cases reported to KDHE since Friday. There has been an increase of 14 clusters since last Wednesday. 7 active clusters are directly related to gatherings at bars and restaurants. Here's a very important note. There are no clusters at this time connected to barbershops, nail salons, or any other close contact service. That is not a coincidence. It is more proof that masks and hygienic business practices do indeed work. If we continue to ignore the experts, there is no question Kansas will end up like other states that have not taken this threat seriously. Just a few weeks ago, the governor of Texas resisted calls for a mask order, saying that the state didn't need a one-size-fits-all solution. Shortly after, as cases in Texas continued to skyrocket, the governor closed bars and reduced restaurants to half capacity. I can't stress the point enough. This is not about state and local control, and it's not a question of personal freedom. This is a matter of social responsibility while we're dealing with the worst outbreak of a communicable virus in a century. Every Kansan has an opportunity to step up to keep their loved ones healthy and keep Kansas open for business. I know there's been a lot of conflicting information out there. I also know certain elected officials and other influential voices would rather put their heads in the sand and keep ignoring this very real threat. 280 Kansans have died. Public health experts in my administration and beyond continue to tell me we can save lives by wearing masks. I know that there are some who are going to be upset, whether it's for the mask order or other actions I've taken. But my responsibility as the governor of this state is to honestly assess and confront this pandemic, regardless of the political consequences. So I will continue to do everything in my power to save lives and to keep our economy open. And I strongly encourage other elected leaders in Kansas to do the same. And with that, I'll take questions.
Governor, does your office have a count now how many counties have opted out of the order?
I actually do have that, but it's all just different colors to me, and so I can't give you a number, but unfortunately more than I wish were the case.
Does that impact how enforcement is being enforced? I mean, attorney generals and leave it up to district attorneys. What's your opinion and advice to local counties on how they should be enforcing this?
Well, I think from the very beginning of this, when we did the stay-at-home order, we never intended to enforce it from the state level. That's always been a local control concern. And I think various locations have taken various approaches to it. I think most of them, by and large, are hoping to use more of an educational and counseling approach than a punitive approach, and I would tend to agree with that. This really isn't intended to make criminals out of people. This is just intended to save their lives and the lives of their friends and their neighbors.
There's pretty good evidence that that approach isn't working, though, isn't there? I mean, Governor Cuomo, for instance, said it's a crime, we'll track you down, we'll find you. I mean, it's a no-nonsense. You haven't taken that approach.
Well, this is also not New York. This is Kansas, and I think we can approach situations differently here than you might in some other jurisdiction.
Governor, was it a mistake to lift statewide restrictions on May 26th as you did and leave this to the counties? I mean, it strikes me that if counties could not opt out of this, there'd be a statewide mask requirement, period. Your office would still be controlling the reopening of the economy. So now when you look back on that, was that a mistake? Do you regret doing it?
I don't think it was a mistake, John. I think you were here and you understand what happened with the legislature, and we did what we needed to do to ensure that Kansas did not lose out on resources that were available to us to fight this pandemic.
Has the economy bounced back a little bit?
I'm sorry, Mark.
Has the economy bounced back a little bit?
Has our economy bounced back a little bit? Actually, if I think about the revenue numbers that I have seen coming out since actually the onset of the pandemic, the impact to our economy was not as great as we had anticipated. I think you remember the April consensus revenue estimates were done, and every month so far we have outdone those. So I don't think the impact was as bad as we predicted. I give a lot of credit to that. to our businesses responding in a very sane and productive way in teleworking a lot of their folks, really providing for people to work at a distance. And I think they've been able to adapt quickly and make things work. So kudos to our businesses. Kudos also to our educators and our school systems, which also shut down but found a way to continue to provide services as best you can in this kind of environment.
Governor, given what you said about bars and restaurants, is there any consideration about rolling back their capacity limits, clamping down on their restrictions? You pointed barbershops and beauty salons, where a lot of people thought it would be problematic, are not, but also cited bars and restaurants.
Well, I think we've seen in other states that there have been communities that have rolled back capacity or just completely shut down, and I'm talking about in other states. So our local elected officials are in a position to do that should they think that's in the best interest of their communities to roll back capacity or to completely close an establishment. Well, right now we're telling them to stay in phase 3.
One more question? Governor, inevitably, I know you don't like to talk about the politics of all of this, but inevitably over the weekend with the cartoon and everything, a number of Democratic candidates were pouncing on the cartoon. And given all the rhetoric regarding the face masks, how much do you think Democrats might benefit electorally given how much pushback the Republicans are giving on the face mask issue? They're very out there. They've been very adamant that they're against the mandate. To what extent do you think that might play out? And I know you don't like to look at it through this prism, but honestly, how much do you think that might benefit Democrats in the long run this year?
Well, you're absolutely right, Brad. I don't like looking at this pandemic through political prism, and I did not spend the weekend doing that, so I really cannot answer that question. I have no idea who something as absurd as that cartoon is going to benefit, if it's going to benefit anybody at all.
Governor, speaking of education, how close do you think we are in the reopening of schools? A lot of people want to know about that.
I know they do, and I am right there with them. I want to open our schools very, very much. It's important not only for the education of our kids, but it's also important to our parents. It's also important to our businesses that we have, not that schools are childcare, but they certainly do provide an outlet for parents to be able to go to work. So I'm very anxious to do that. I've got a meeting with the State Department of Education on this Wednesday, and we'll be discussing exactly that. When schools can open and how they can open.
Thank you very much.